The little girl said to the millionaire. I don't need money. I just need a hug like your daughter. The summer night market buzzed with life. Strings of warm lights cast a golden glow overhead. The scent of grilled corn and sweet pastries filled the air. And laughter floated between food stalls like music. Adam Carter walked among it all. Perfectly out of place in his tailored navy suit and polished leather shoes. At 36. He was a man of precision. CEO. Self-made millionaire. Single, unattached to anything he could not measure in profit or loss. But tonight, after another exhausting business meeting nearby, he craved something simple. Something soft. He stopped at a small ice cream cart nestled between lantern-lit stands. The vendor nodded at him, already preparing a scoop of vanilla, when a small figure appeared at his side. She could not have been more than 5 years old. Her hair was a mass of untamed curls. Her dress was faded and too short at the sleeves. And her sneakers were mismatched. But what caught Adam wasn't her appearance. It was her eyes. Wide. Bright. And focused solely on him with no fear. No shame, just something deeper. Something ancient. Almost. Adam smiled gently and crouched down to her level. Do you need something, sweetheart? He reached into his wallet, ready to hand her a few bills. But the girl shook her head. She didn't even glance at the money. Her voice came softly, steady and clear in the noise of the market. I don't need money, she said. I just want someone to hug me. Like you hugged your daughter. Adam blinked. The words hit harder than he expected. I don't have a daughter, he said quietly. Caught off guard. The girl tilted her head slightly. Her voice softer now. I don't have a dad, she said. I've never been hugged by a dad. Not like the other kids at school. They get hugs before class. Or when they fall. I just wanted to know what that feels like. Adam felt his chest tighten. In that moment, the night market blurred around them. The music faded. The footsteps softened. All that remained was the quiet voice of a little girl and the ache she had awakened inside him. He remembered being a boy her age. Alone in the front yard of a big, empty house. His father was always away, business meetings. Work trips. Always too busy. He was never there when Adam needed him. Never once waiting at the school gates. Never once crouching down for a hug. He remembered wishing. Just once. To be held like that. Adam said nothing. He knelt and slowly opened his arms. The little girl stepped in without hesitation, wrapping her small arms around his neck. She was small, warm, and somehow weightless. But the weight in his chest grew heavier with every heartbeat. He held her tightly, not politely. Not briefly, truly held her. Like someone who needed it. Too. And he did. He closed his eyes, breathing in the faint scent of strawberries in her curls. And tried not to let the tears fall. Not here. Not now. Footsteps approached from behind. Lena. A woman's voice called. Alarmed but calm. Adam opened his eyes. The little girl didn't move. He looked up. A woman stood before him, holding 2 bottles of water. Her blonde hair pulled back loosely. She wore jeans and a plain white shirt. But there was nothing plain about her face. She was striking in a quiet, Weary kind of way, sharp. Tired eyes that still held a fire. And a mouth drawn firm. Not by bitterness. But by resolve. She froze when she saw them. Her daughter nestled in a stranger's arms. Her eyes narrowed. Protective instinct rising. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice steady. No panic. Only steel. Adam gently loosened his embrace, letting the little girl step back. She looked up at her mother. Then at him. "I'm just someone passing through," he said softly, standing to his full height. The woman's eyes held his for a long second. She didn't speak. But he could tell she was reading him. And something about what she saw made her hesitate. Her daughter looked perfectly at ease. Smiling. Safe. The woman, Claire, said nothing more. She just reached for her daughter's hand and gave Adam a small, slow nod. He turned back to the vendor. Accepted the vanilla cone he had paid for moments earlier. And handed it down to Lena. "Vanilla," he said. "Sweet. Like hugs." Lena's eyes lit up. "Thank you, mister." He smiled faintly. Then turned and walked away. His tall frame blending into the river of strangers under the yellow lights. Behind him, Claire stood silently, watching his retreating back. She didn't know who he was or why he looked so sad when he held her child. But something in the way he had held her gently, like someone holding on to something fragile and long-lost, left an imprint on her heart. Not fear. Just quiet wonder. The penthouse was as quiet as always. High above the city. Adam Carter stepped out of his elevator. The doors closing behind him with a soft hiss. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dazzling view of the Manhattan skyline. But tonight it looked cold. Remote. He loosened his tie. Set down his keys. And walked toward the kitchen. The silence followed him. No laughter. No footsteps. No trace of the little girl's voice. But that voice. It had stayed. "I don't need money. I just want someone to hug me." Adam had heard a lot of things in his life, sharp questions in boardrooms. Hollow congratulations at galas. Whispered promises from women who only wanted to be seen on his arm. But nothing had ever cut as deep as that. He sat down at the kitchen counter. Hands folded. Staring at nothing. The image of her face. Her curls. Her wide eyes. The way she had leaned into his chest without fear it would not fade. And neither did the ache that followed. For the first time in years, Adam allowed himself to remember. He was 7. A birthday. A new toy left on the marble kitchen table. Wrapped neatly. No card. His father had called from an airport in Tokyo. His voice tired. "Happy birthday, son. There's money in your account. Buy whatever you want." No hug. Not even a handshake. And it had always been that way. Business came first. Always. His father built a fortune and gave Adam the best schools. The best food. The best future money could buy. But never once had he sat down on the floor to play. Never once had he waited at the school gates. Never once had he opened his arms. Adam had buried all of that. Or so he thought. But tonight, that little girl's hug had pulled it all back up. Like a weed he thought was dead but had never really been uprooted. He didn't know her name. He didn't know who she was or what her life looked like outside that market. But he remembered her mother, blonde, tired, protective. And yet, when she saw him holding her daughter, there had been no shouting, no panic, just a quiet understanding in her eyes. Like maybe, just maybe, she'd seen that sadness in his face, too. Adam sat there for a long time. He poured himself a drink but never took a sip. Instead, he pulled out his phone and opened his calendar. He deleted a dinner reservation scheduled for the next Friday. Then he tapped in a new note, return to market. 8:30 p.m. He didn't know what he was hoping for. But he knew what he felt. And that feeling, foreign and fragile, had a name he hadn't said in years, longing. The night market was alive again. A week had passed since Adam Carter walked away from that small child and her quiet mother. But he had not stopped thinking about them. Now, dressed more casually, still crisp, but not polished like before, he returned to the same spot, weaving through crowds and music and sizzling food stalls. He searched slowly, scanning each corner, trying not to look too eager. Then he saw them. Near the far edge of the market, tucked beneath a string of hanging paper lanterns, stood a small table covered in handmade items, woven bracelets in soft colors, embroidered cloths, tiny notebooks with hand-drawn covers. Behind the table stood the woman he remembered. Her blonde hair tied back, her eyes sharp and quiet. She wore jeans and a linen shirt rolled at the sleeves. Her hands moved carefully as she organized the display. Her every motion calm, practiced, deliberate. Next to her sat the little girl. She was drawing again, crouched over a pad of paper with a stubby crayon clutched in one hand, her tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. Adam hesitated for just a moment, then approached. "Hi," he said softly, offering a tentative smile. The little girl looked up first. Recognition bloomed across her face instantly. "It's the Vanilla Ice Cream Man," she shouted with delight. Adam laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "Close enough." Clarice still didn't know her name, lifted her gaze. Her eyes widened for a split second. But there was no fear in them. Only a guarded curiosity. Adam reached for the table and picked up one of the bracelets. Sky blue with tiny silver threads. "How much for this?" he asked. Claire studied him for a moment, then said evenly, $5. He pulled out a 10 and placed it in the tin box beside her. The little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Can I show him my picture?" Claire nodded. "Lena." He caught her name as the girl spoke, turning her pad toward him. It was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, and one small. They stood under a big yellow sun with a pink heart floating above them. "This is me and Mommy and," she paused, grinning. "A friend." Adam looked up. Claire's expression softened just for a moment. "I'm Adam," he said, offering his hand. "Claire," she replied, shaking it gently. "This is Lena. We've met," he said with a small nod toward the child. Claire smiled. Not quite warmly, but not coldly either. As customers drifted past, Adam lingered at the corner of her table. They talked in short, Careful exchanges about the weather. The market. The bracelets. Then, more slowly, the conversation turned personal. Claire told him she used to study art. She had dreamed of becoming an illustrator for children's books. College didn't last, she said, adjusting a display of bracelets. Lena came. Early and alone. Adam didn't press. Her voice was calm. Not bitter. She wasn't ashamed of her story. Only matter of fact. I work evenings at a diner sometimes, she added. Other nights I sell here. It keeps us going. Adam watched her hands. Strong. Precise. Tired. He imagined them once. Sketching gentle forests. Playful animals. Fairy tale scenes. Now they tied knots in thread and stitched initials into handkerchiefs. Do you ever get tired? He asked. Genuinely curious. Claire paused. Her eyes flicked toward Lena, who was now drawing another sun. Then she said with a small smile, as long as she keeps smiling. I don't get tired. Adam said nothing. But the words landed deep. He looked at her. Not at the curve of her jaw or the way her hair caught the lantern light, but at the quiet strength she carried, like a second skin, a woman who'd given up everything for a child and never once seemed to want the world's pity for it. In all the boardrooms and ballrooms of his life, Adam had never met anyone like Claire. And in the warmth of that little market, in the soft light of paper lanterns and laughter, he realized something he hadn't felt in years. Respect. The real kind. Earned. Not assumed, the kind that made him want to listen more than speak. He stayed a little longer that night. Long enough for Lena to gift him a new drawing of a flower with a smiling sun. And for Claire to hand him a second bracelet. Just because. As he left, Claire said only, "Thanks for stopping by." Adam nodded. But in his heart, he knew he wasn't just stopping by. He'd be back. And next time, he wouldn't be a stranger. The weeks passed quietly, like soft pages turning in a book. Adam Carter kept returning to the night market. At first, just on weekends. Then a few quiet weekdays. 2. Always to the same table with handmade crafts. Always with the same quiet intent. He came with something new each time: bags of fresh fruit, boxes of children's books, warm clothes in Lena's size, coloring pens, sometimes a hot meal wrapped in foil. He never made a show of it. He simply placed them gently beside Claire's basket or handed them to Lena with a smile. Claire never asked for any of it. She rarely even thanked him with words. But over time, her eyes softened when she saw him walking through the market lights. And sometimes, when he wasn't looking, she smiled. They began to share small things: street food at closing time, stories about their days, quiet jokes. Lena always sat between them, drawing, chattering about her pictures. Every week she drew the same image in new ways: a little house with 3 people standing in front, one tall, one medium, one small, always with a big sun. "One day this will be our house," she said once proudly. "It has 3 beds. One for Mommy, one for me, and one for the vanilla ice cream man." Adam chuckled. But Claire had looked away quickly, her fingers tightening slightly on the edge of the table. They never called what they were doing anything. Not dating. Not friendship. Not charity. Just staying. One night, as they sat eating grilled corn near the curb, Adam spoke more honestly than he expected. "I never really knew what it was like to have a dad," he said. "I mean, technically I had one. But he was always in meetings. Always building his empire. Never once sat at the dinner table. Never came to school plays. Never hugged me." Claire looked up from her cup. Adam continued, his voice quieter. "You know what I remember most from elementary school? Watching other kids run into their dad's arms. I used to pretend I didn't care. But I did. I cared a lot." There was a long pause. Then Claire said softly, "I guess that makes two of us." Adam turned to her. Claire looked down at Lena, who was curled up on a blanket nearby, flipping through a picture book. "I had a mom who tried. But my dad left before I turned 10. I never saw him again." Adam nodded slowly. Their stories weren't identical. But the ache beneath them was the same. Two grown-ups. Successful in surviving. Still learning how to heal. The next Saturday. Rain fell hard. Claire didn't open her stall that night. Adam waited anyway. He stood by the familiar corner, umbrella in hand, scanning the street. And then he saw them. Claire and Lena, huddled under the bus shelter. Lena's head resting on her mother's lap. Claire looked up, surprised to see him. "She's burning up," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "I tried the clinic. But they were full. And..." Adam didn't wait. "Come with me," he said. "I've got a car." They rushed to the hospital. Rain slamming against the windshield. Adam drove like it was his own child in the back seat. At the ER, he stayed close while Claire handled the paperwork. Adam paced the hall as Lena whimpered in her mother's arms. Later that night, Lena was settled into a bed. And 4 in her tiny arm. A nurse dimmed the lights. Claire sat on one side of the bed, exhausted. Adam sat on the other. He reached for Lena's free hand and wrapped it gently in his. Then, softly, he began to speak. Not about business or weather or news, but about a princess who could turn sadness into flowers. And about a knight who couldn't fight but knew how to listen. He told her a story made up on the spot. Just for her. Claire watched in silence. Long past midnight, Lena finally fell into a peaceful sleep. Adam stayed. He didn't check his phone once. Didn't glance at the clock. He just sat there, holding a child who wasn't his but who, in that moment, mattered more than anyone. And Claire. She sat back in her chair and looked at him in a new way. This wasn't a man who pitied her. This wasn't a man playing hero. This was someone who knew what it meant to stay. The days began to blend gently into one another. By now, Adam Carter had become a part of their lives in a way that felt natural. Not dramatic. There was no announcement. No shift in title or label, just a quiet, growing presence. Like a warm light gradually filling a dim room. Lena had started calling him Mr. Warm. The name stuck after she said it the first time. Innocently pointing at him during a picnic in the park. Because he brings warm food and warm hugs. And he always smiles with his eyes. Adam had laughed. But Claire had gone still for a moment. She didn't correct her daughter. She didn't laugh either. She just looked at him and nodded faintly. As if to say, "It's true." They spent weekends together. Never extravagant, but meaningful. Adam had offered 5-star restaurants, private rooftops, luxury experiences. Claire had gently refused them all. "I'm more comfortable where the chairs are plastic and the food comes in paper boats," she'd said with a small smile. So that's what they did. They ate noodles from street stalls, shared fruit from market carts, and once sat on the curb outside a taco truck, watching the sky turn lavender as the city lights blinked awake. Lena dipped her fingers in a melted popsicle and painted stars on Adam's arm while he pretended to be shocked every time. Claire laughed more now. It was never loud, never forced. But it was there in the soft curve of her mouth, in the lightness of her steps, in the way she stopped apologizing for things that weren't her fault. Adam noticed everything. He also noticed how he had changed. He stopped checking his phone at dinner. He no longer worked past midnight. No longer barked cold responses through email. No longer measured time and profit margins. He had started sleeping more deeply. Dreaming even. There were fewer voices in his head demanding perfection. And more silence. More peace. One evening, they sat on a blanket near the water, sharing fried rice and egg rolls. Lena had fallen asleep, curled between them, her little fingers clutching Adam's sleeve. Claire reached into her bag, pulled out a wallet, and quietly tried to slide a folded bill toward Adam's side of the meal container. He noticed. "What are you doing?" he asked. Not unkindly. She hesitated. "I'm paying for half the dinner." "You don't have to do that," he replied. "I know," she said. "But I want to." He leaned back, resting his hands on the blanket behind him. His voice was calm, low but steady. "Claire," he said, "I'm not buying you dinner." She looked at him, eyes guarded. "I'm not buying you," he continued. "I'm not buying your time, or your stories, or your presence. I'm not keeping a tally of how many meals or books or hours I've spent with you." He paused, then added gently, "I'm not buying anything. I'm just staying." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to Lena's sleeping face. When she finally looked back at him, there was something raw and unguarded in her gaze. "You make it sound easy," she said softly. "But most people, they don't stay." He nodded. "I know. That's why I'm trying to prove I'm not most people." Claire's lips parted as if to speak. But no words came. Instead, she reached for her daughter's hand and held it tightly. For a long while, they sat in silence, listening to the hum of the city, the wind rustling through leaves, and the distant, rhythmic splash of waves against the shore. Adam didn't reach for her hand. He didn't try to press the moment further. But inside him, something settled. For the first time in a long, long while, he felt exactly where he was supposed to be. Not chasing, not fixing, not building, just staying. And Claire, sitting beside him, Began to believe, maybe for the first time, that someone might actually mean it. The weather was beginning to shift. Late summer folding gently into early fall. The nights grew cooler. The skies a deeper shade of blue. The changes were subtle. But Adam felt them in ways that had nothing to do with the weather. Claire had become quieter lately. Not cold. Not distant. But contemplative. Like someone standing at the edge of something she wasn't sure she wanted to step into. Adam noticed. Of course. He noticed everything when it came to her. They were sitting on a park bench one Sunday afternoon while Lena played nearby. Chasing falling leaves with a stick in one hand and her stuffed bunny in the other. Claire was sipping coffee. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the paper cup even though it had already cooled. After a long silence, she spoke. "I'm afraid to let you in," she said. Her voice low. Not looking at him. "Because if you leave, I won't know how to explain it to her." Adam turned toward her. He didn't interrupt. Claire went on. "She already sees you as something permanent. Something steady. And I'm scared that if one day you realize this life isn't convenient or easy or polished, you'll go. And I'll have to watch her look for you every time the door opens." Adam didn't answer with words. Instead, he nodded once. Then reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded invitation. It was simple, a flyer for a local children's art exhibition being held at a small community gallery downtown. He had signed Lena up weeks ago without telling either of them. "She has talent," he said softly. "And she deserves to be seen." Claire stared at the paper. Then at him. Unsure how to respond. But when the night of the exhibit arrived, she came. With Lena in her best little dress and two tiny braids down the back of her head. Adam was already there. Waiting at the door. Holding a small bouquet of sunflowers. They walked in together. The three of them. The gallery was filled with color crayon sketches. Watercolor dreams. Finger-painted animals. And skies too pink to be real. Laughter echoed through the room as proud parents pointed at paper masterpieces. Lena's drawings were displayed on a long wall near the back. Adam had come earlier in the day to frame them himself, thin wooden borders. Hand-sanded. With her name etched gently beneath in gold ink. Claire saw the effort in every detail. They reached Lena's spot. And the little girl gasped. Her drawing, one she had done on a rainy afternoon while sitting on Adam's living room rug, was right in the center. Three figures stood under a roof. Hand in hand, one tall. One medium. One small. A dog was messily added in the corner. A heart above the door. She turned around to face the room. Eyes shining. "This is my new house," she announced loudly. "There's Mommy and Mr. Warm and me." Several people turned. Smiling. A few chuckled kindly. The room, just for a second, felt like it held its breath. Claire looked at Adam. For once, she didn't glance away. She didn't change the subject or brush off the moment. She just looked. And in that gaze was something soft and surrendered. An understanding passed silently between them. After the exhibit, they walked home slowly. Lena skipped ahead. Her drawing tucked under one arm like a treasure. Claire broke the silence first. "You know, she's never drawn anyone in our house before. Not until you." Adam smiled. "She's got good taste." Claire laughed. The sound small but full. Then she stopped walking. Right in the middle of the sidewalk. And looked up at him. "I'm still scared," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I'm trying," she added. "I see that," he said. And then, without ceremony, without pressure, he reached out not for her hand, but for the space beside her, and walked there quietly, at her pace. Because sometimes love doesn't announce itself. It just shows up and stays. Autumn deepened, painting the leaves in shades of gold and ember. The backyard of their small house became a quiet retreat from the world. A place of soft light, simple meals, and the kind of silence that didn't need filling. Adam had been planning something, though he barely admitted it to himself. He wasn't good with words. Not the tender ones. Not the personal ones. Contracts. Negotiations. Reports, those were his language. But love. Love had always been something that happened to other people. And yet here he was. Folding napkins. Arranging paper flowers he had made himself after watching half a dozen tutorials. He had never touched origami before. But somehow his hands wanted to do something careful for her. Something that spoke even when his voice might falter. He set the table under the sycamore tree. Hung fairy lights along the fence. And waited. Claire came out just before sunset. Wearing a soft blue sweater and a look of cautious curiosity. She paused when she saw the scene. Nothing grand. Just thoughtful. Her eyes scanned the lights. The flowers. The quiet effort in every detail. "You did all this?" she asked. Adam nodded. "Well. Me and YouTube." She laughed. The kind that settled between them like warm tea. She took a seat. And for a while they ate slowly. No rush. No pressure. Just soft chicken and roasted vegetables. Music playing low from the porch speaker. Lena was already asleep inside. After dessert, Claire leaned back. Her eyes half closed in contentment. "You really didn't have to do all this." Adam looked at her. The wind lifted a few strands of her hair across her cheek. And he reached out, brushing them back before he realized what he was doing. "I know," he said. "But I wanted to." She opened her eyes at that. Something unreadable flickering in them. Adam exhaled. Long and steady. Then, with his hands folded tightly on the table, he began. "I've never been a father," he said. "Never even thought about being one. And I've never really been someone's partner. Not in the way that matters." Claire didn't speak. Just watched him. "But if you need someone," he continued. His voice softer now. "Who's willing to learn how to be both? I'm here. I might mess up. I might take time. But I'll be here. Not because I feel obligated. Because I want to." The words hung in the air between them. Fragile and unpolished. But true. Claire didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up slowly and stepped around the table. Adam rose to meet her. Uncertain. His hands still at his sides. She wrapped her arms around him. Not tightly. Not desperately. Just wholly. Her voice was almost a whisper. Her head resting on his shoulder. I don't need magic, she said. I just need someone who stays honestly and long enough. Adam closed his eyes, his arms finally rising to hold her back. And in that embrace, in the quiet that followed, something settled into place. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't fireworks. It was something better. It was real. A year passed like a quiet breath, soft and full of change. The seasons rolled over the city gently. And by the time autumn returned, Adam Carter no longer lived in a high-rise penthouse above Manhattan. He now woke up each morning to birdsong and the scent of fresh coffee in a small, sunlit kitchen in a cozy house just outside the city limits. The home was modest, with a white fence, a flower bed that Claire had planted from scratch, and 2 bicycles leaning against the porch. Inside, the walls were warm and lived in, decorated with Lena's colorful drawings and tiny handprints in paint across the hallway. Adam had never lived somewhere like this, not even as a child. But somehow, nothing had ever felt more like home. Claire had started a small art class in their backyard studio, a space Adam had built with her over the spring. She painted a sign herself, Little Light Studio. Children from the neighborhood came 3 days a week, bringing with them markers, laughter, and a new kind of joy Claire had never known she needed. Adam spent his days in slower ways now. He still managed his business, still took important calls, but only from the office down the hall. He spent more time volunteering at the children's center in town, where he read to the kids, fixed broken toys, and taught a weekly class called How to Listen Like a Superhero. And Lena, now officially a first grader, wore her backpack like a cape and proudly told everyone she met that she had 2 homes now, one in her heart, and one with a mailbox and a garden and a dad who made silly-shaped pancakes on Saturdays. She had a favorite shirt, too. A white tee with a hand-drawn design that Claire helped her make. On the front, it said, "Being hugged is my superpower." Adam couldn't read the words without swallowing hard. On the day of Lena's 6th birthday, they threw a small party in the backyard. There were balloons tied to fence posts, handmade paper crowns, and a cake shaped like a giant crayon box. Friends and neighbors gathered, bringing gifts wrapped in rainbows and ribbons. But the real gift came near the end of the afternoon, after the candles had been blown out and the first round of cake had been devoured. Lena stood on a little stool in the middle of the yard, still wearing her paper crown, her cheeks smudged with frosting. She held a crumpled note in one hand and a lollipop in the other. "Okay," she said proudly, clearing her throat like a professional. "I have something to say." The yard went quiet, the kind of hush that comes from real affection and attention. She looked at Adam and Claire, then at the guests, then back at her paper. "A long time ago," she began, "I didn't have a daddy. And I used to think maybe I'd never get to have one. I used to see other kids at school get picked up by their dads or hugged before class. And I would pretend I didn't care." Her voice wavered a little, but she kept going. "But then one night, I met someone and I asked him for a hug. That was all I asked for. Just one. Because sometimes that's the only wish your heart can fit." She looked over at Adam again. "And I got my hug. But then, I got more. I got someone who stays. Someone who eats noodles on the sidewalk with me. Someone who reads the same book 5 times and still laughs at the silly part. Lena took a deep breath. So today, I want to say this. I used to wish for one hug. But now I have a hug that never lets go. The crowd clapped. Some wiped away tears. Claire reached for Adam's hand, squeezing it tight. Her eyes wet but shining. Adam stepped forward, lifted Lena off the stool, and hugged her close. Then, without a word, he reached for Claire, pulling her in. Too. The three of them stood in a circle of sun and confetti. In the middle of a backyard that smelled like cake and grass and something softer than either of those, love. Adam kissed the top of Lena's head and whispered. And I. Sweetheart. I finally learned how to love. One hug at a time. Sometimes. All it takes is one small voice to change the course of a guarded heart. Sometimes. A single hug, given or received, can open a door to healing that no amount of success, wealth, or logic ever could. Adam thought he had everything. Until a little girl reminded him that real love is not something you earn. It's something you stay for. And Claire, who had spent so long being strong for two, finally learned what it felt like when someone stayed for her. 2. This wasn't just a story about a man and a woman, or a mother and a daughter. It was a story about choosing to show up, about the courage to be vulnerable, and about how a simple wish for a hug became the foundation of a forever family. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or reminded you of the quiet power of love, then you belong here. Subscribe to Wild West Love Stories for more soul-stirring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected connections. Because somewhere out there, someone just needs a reason to believe again. And maybe the next story will be the one that starts with you.